twist this till it gets real close to your mouth.
Okay. Can everybody hear me? Okay. Well, welcome. Thank you all for coming. I'm really not an expert. We have an expert with us tonight. We have Kathy Glover, who is from Earlville, and she is a certified appraiser with the American Quilt Society. She did one appraisal for us this evening, and if anybody decides they want an appraisal, you can see her afterwards and make your own arrangements. Tonight we're going to present the antique quilts that are in the collection here at the museum. We're doing a bed turning. Now, for non-quilters, what is a bed turning? No, I'm not going to turn the bed around, and I'm not going to turn the mattress over. A bed turning is a way of introducing quilters and non-quilters to the beauty of antique or unique quilts in an interesting and different way. Bed turnings originated long ago as a social event. A married woman would invite her friends, neighbors, or club group to a bed turning to show her skills at sewing and quilting. Her quilts would be piled on top of each other on a bed. The hostess would then turn back each quilt one by one as she talked about each quilt. I have asked Jan and Sandy, who are volunteers at our museum, to help me turn the quilts as we go through our collection. Some of the quilts are on display by the entry into this part of the museum, and we'll describe those later. Originally, quilts were made as a necessity to keep warm when there wasn't central heat. They were often made from old clothing, no longer wearable, but enough good fabric to use in a quilt. Probably the oldest quilt in our collection is an example. A quilt that was made circa 1870 by Mary Hampson Kreider was possibly from Israel Kreider's old shirts. It is 80 by 63 inches. Though faded, it was made from green, blue, and pink, which maybe was red originally. Excuse me. Getting too close to the...
Can we take pictures?
Excuse me.
Can we take pictures?
Yeah.
I guess I need to move that further away. Okay, sorry about that. The pink, I'm guessing, might have been red originally, and it's faded over time. They're square blocks arranged in a design which I haven't been able to document. So if anyone knows that pattern, please let me know. So go ahead and walk that back. This quilt was donated by Bruce Trotter and Debbie Trotter Steffes. Debbie is the curator here at the museum. Maybe we need another pair of movers. This next quilt is the first quilt that was donated to the Historical Society in 1923, when the Historical Society was first formed. It was made by Catherine Szymanski, who was born in 1827 and died in 1916. She was called Mrs. Smith and lived on North Division Street. Her husband, Gregory, was a miner. It is dated 1875 and is a log cabin pattern of clothing scraps in a variety of colors, with the traditional red centers. It is made of cotton, flannel, and silk fabrics and is 61 by 72 inches. The backing and binding are cotton, but there is no batting. Many of the old quilts did not have batting. Surprisingly, it has very little damage for nearly 150 years old.
Beautiful. I love that. Okay. Yeah, that's pretty.
Okay.
Okay. Okay. Okay. Okay. Okay. Okay. Okay. Okay. Okay. Okay. Okay. Okay. Okay. Okay. Okay. Okay. Okay. Okay. Okay. Okay. Okay. Okay. Okay. Okay. Okay. Okay. Okay. Okay. Okay. Okay. Okay. Okay. Okay. Okay. Okay. Okay. Okay. Okay. Okay. Okay. Okay. Okay. Okay. Okay. Okay. Okay. Okay. Okay. Okay. Okay. Okay. Okay. Okay. Okay. Okay. Okay. Okay. Okay. Okay. Okay. Okay. Okay. Okay. Okay. Okay. Okay. Okay. Okay. Okay. Okay. Okay. Okay. Okay. Okay. Okay. Okay. Okay. Okay. Okay. Okay. Okay. Okay. Okay. Okay. Okay. Okay. Okay. Okay. Okay. Okay. Okay. Okay. Okay. Okay. Okay. Okay. Okay. Okay. Okay. Okay. Okay. Okay. Okay. Okay. Okay. Okay. Okay. Okay. Okay. Okay. Okay. Okay. Okay. Okay. Okay. Okay. Okay. Okay. Okay. Okay. Okay. Okay. Okay. Okay. Okay. Okay. Okay. Okay. Okay. Okay. Okay. Okay. Okay. Okay. Okay. Okay. Okay. Okay. Okay. Okay. Okay. Okay. Okay. Okay. Okay. Okay. Okay. Okay. Okay. Okay. Okay. Okay. Okay. Okay. Okay. Okay. Okay. Okay. Okay. Okay. Okay. Okay. Okay. Okay. Okay. Okay. Okay. Okay. Okay. Okay. Okay. Okay. Okay. Okay. Okay. Okay. Okay. Okay. Okay. Okay I don't know because everything.
Then he's
Where did
not
that
in the
paisley
picture.
pattern? I mean, how they get that together? Oh, well, they got materials. They could buy material and do that one. Pattern? At the dry goods. And that look older, or newer to me. Like these. But I don't think they are. No, that's what they did.
If your hands are clean and you don't have any hand lotion on, you don't need to have gloves. That would speed things up. Thank you, ladies.
I was looking for a partner.
Okay.
So just hold it up.
The next star is a blazing star of red, yellow, and willow on a white background. The back is a red and white stripe. We kind of think this might keep you awake if you had it in your bed. It was pieced and quilted by the Spears family, women of Central City, Marion County, Illinois, in the 1880 to 1885 time period. It was donated by Ruth Spears Bengi, who lived in Mazan.
Oh my, that's beautiful.
It's huge. It's going to, yeah.
Is that all hand done, all the stitching?
This is all hand done, yes.
We did.
Hand pieced and hand quilted.
First.
All that, look at all that stitching.
Okay.
Took hours and hours.
Oh,
Next is an octagon star quilt, circa 1880 to 1890. It is white cotton with lavender and green in 12 blocks set on point. It is hand pieced and hand quilted, heavily quilted with clamshells, flowers, feathers, and vines of 11 to 13 inches per stitches per inch. And if you've ever done any hand quilting, those are tiny
11
stitches.
per inch.
It was donated by Helen Gale and made by her great-grandmother, Mary Elizabeth Hogue, who married Abraham Holderman.
Beautiful.
I love this one.
You could see like praising one. Difficult. But years ago they didn't, because they didn't have them. It's just the work of the stitching, the two pieces of material together. And then of course all the stitching underneath and the cutting. The cutting of it.
Quilt number 5 is called a 54, 40, or fight quilt pattern. One of two identical ones was made by Ellen or Mrs. Geheil Isham with help from her daughter Ellen Isham, I hope I'm pronouncing that
Isham.
right, Isham
I
Isham Slider, about 1896, and quilted by the Isham aunts. Dominant colors are burgundy and blue of 25 15-inch square blocks with 4-inch sashing, cornerstones, and a border. All cotton fabrics and hand quilted 8 stitches per inch. The Ishams were the first residents of Mazan. Ellen was the mother of Martha Slider, one of our benefactors in the making of the original part of this museum.
Oh,
You guys wanna come up?
that's beautiful.
And we have 2 of them just like this. Just a sideline, 54, 40, or fight, if you're not familiar with that, was a slogan in 1844, a reference to the border of Russian Alaska, and that the United States ought to claim all the territory up to 54 degrees and 40 minutes north parallel, or fight Great Britain for the land. Okay, number 6.
Morning glory.
Is an applique quilt, blue and green morning glories on white cotton background. Was hand appliqued and quilted circa 1900 by Marietta Kreider Wainwright. The quilt was donated by Betty Kreider Ferguson.
Oh, gorgeous.
What was the size of that?
Pardon?
What was the size on that?
I don't have that written down.
Okay, that's fine.
I probably have it in my records, but I can look it up later.
Looks big. It looks
Yeah,
bigger
it's bigger than a regular double, yes.
Uh-huh.
You put a circa 1900 on it?
1896. No, I'm sorry, 1900. We have another Morning Glory applique quilt, circa 1920, that was made by Mabel Brown. It is blue, green, pink, purple with pink and white block border, all hand sewn and donated by Bruce Trotter.
Oh, gorgeous. Gorgeous.
Oh, it's a morning glory too.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, those two were both Morning Glories.
Just unreal.
To your right, to your right.
There, your shoe.
Oh,
rack.
look at your shoe.
Thank you.
The next two quilts are from the Ruth Wallace estate. This is a 9-patch variation with 8-pointed star blocks, sashing, and cornerstones. The pattern was from Quilter's album of patchwork patterns by Ginny Beyer. Ruth was a teacher in Verona and spent her life on the family farm in Vienna Township.
Gorgeous.
That one has some layer.
See, there's no book.
So you'll notice there's no batting in these old quilts. They didn't have the battings that we have now.
Right.
Sometimes they would put an extra layer of sheets or flannel or something in them.
This one, Marion, this has a thin cotton.
Does it have a thin cotton in it? Oh, okay.
We're through that.
When they're in that condition, you know they were well used and well loved.
Yes. It's just a top.
Yes, this next one is just the top. It was never finished. This again is from the Ruth Wallace estate from Verona. And it's a rolling stone pattern, which was a new pattern to me. It also was from the Quilter's album of patchwork patterns.
Beautiful.
So it's in excellent condition because it was never used. It wasn't finished.
Because there's no back to it.
Yeah, no back on it.
You wore it out.
Yeah, yes, the pattern on it. The choice was
Hartman made that. Yeah, that's what Grandma Hartman made me. And we used it all the time, we watched it all the time.
This is a crazy squares quilt of 288 4-inch blocks made of multicolored wool, linen, chintz, and sateen materials with feather stitching embroidery between the blocks. The backing and binding are linen. It was made by Josephine Jurdy in 1908, mother of Gertrude Jurdy. Eunice Kreider Moore, a relative, took it to the Morris Library in 1980, and our curator Debbie brought it to the museum. There is a lot of shattered blocks, which happens a lot with crazy quilts, as silk and velvet and satin fabrics are often used and do not hold up.
See, that's what happened, Grandma, a lot of the squares. That's why this one doesn't look like it was used much. I just can't figure out why they used all that yarn for embroidery stitching.
Because that's what they did for crazy quilts. That's what made it a crazy quilt. They usually used unusual shapes of fabric, cutting out pieces from various pieces of clothing, whatever was still good, and held it together with embroidery stitches. Okay, the next one is a white memory quilt with 71 patches of colorful calicos in 9-inch blocks. The blocks have the names of church members from Park Street Congregational Church in Mazan. It was made in 1939 and 1940 by the ladies of the church for Reverend Dale Wellbaum's wife, Zelda. He served from 1938 to 1942. The quilt was returned to Bob and Evelyn Bates by the Wellbaum's daughters in 2011. It was then donated to the museum in 2019 by other Bazan residents Pauline Brown, Ann Williams, Helen Philman, Cindy Bingheim, and Joanne Weisseth.
Who's from Mazan?
Can I get a
Sure,
Who's
who's from
name?
Mazan?
I gotta get this
Yeah.
name right
Well,
here.
I don't-
Yeah,
Myrtle Meisner's on here. Do you want me to turn Laura?
you're good.
Donna's name, that's probably one of
Yeah,
them.
Ada Dix,
Ada Dix, yeah.
that was cousin.
Well, it's here, she can come and see it. Well, they were just members of the church.
From
That's
the
what they
Ethel
did for
DeLochery
Prince
estate, we received 2 quilts. One is a red cotton background, blocks of blue and white with red dots of 38-inch churn dash blocks. The back is tan with a brown binding.
Oh, yeah.
That's a popular pattern, the churn dash.
What was the year on that?
I don't have a year on it. If we don't get that information when they bring them in and document them for us, all we can do is guess. I knew Ethel, she passed away a few years back. Whether they were hers or her parents, it's hard to say.
Probably 1910.
1910, okay.
Circa.
Kathy knows these things more than I do.
So a circa date can go 10 years prior, 10 years after. So,
All right, this is a 1940 era quilt made by Mabel Brown in a large blue block with white blocks with blue embroidered fans done in chain stitch and French knots, also donated by Bruce Trotter. The embroidery on these is just magnificent.
Yeah, you know what, I'm gonna put it in half so
Yeah,
both sides
there
can
you go.
see.
We'll get smart here.
We're learning before we go.
That belongs in the floor, but it's not shown.
When we laid these out, I think we got 2 of them mixed up because this is the second one from the Ethel DeLochery collection.
Oh,
And I cannot identify this pattern. So,
another one.
yeah. I have big, thick books that I can look through, but it's a combination of patterns, I think. But maybe Kathy can help us out here. It is all hand-pieced and quilted.
It's
I
gorgeous.
can research them, but that would,
I think you're right, and I think it's a combination.
A combination of several. We've got
Make
the
your book a
flying
lot
geese and 9-patch, square and a square.
They wanted to be different.
and even the bigger blocks, if you research those bigger blocks, there's probably a name specifically for those 2. Even though. Thank you.
we get down to the last quilt. Will there be a P? One little P.
Donated in 2015 by Don Johnson, and unknown when it was made, but maybe the 30s to 40s era. It is a quilt by his grandmother, Nettie Johnson. It is called a rail fence pattern with 5 stripes per block of multicolored pink, green, yellow, and brown. The backing is brown and white plaid with pink flowers and green leaves. And it was finished by tying with orange yarn. Many times that's how they did them, was a little faster than doing all that hand stitching.
Orange must have been the color. Or they-
Sometimes these types of fabrics, I don't know, Kathy can verify or not, were, the fabric was taken from the sacks that grain or sugar came in. And they made pretty colorful designs on these sacks, and
I wore feed sack dresses.
the housewife would use that material after the sack was emptied to make quilts or clothing, whatever. Okay, Carol,
Get yard goods.
Made all my
You could
dresses
also
and
buy yard goods
fancy
then. The only way you
dresses.
can tell a true feed sack is whether you can find the chain stitch of them stitching that
stitching the
that
bag.
bag closed. Otherwise you say feed sack like.
Feeds-
Yeah.
Okay,
It's not a true feed sack.
yeah.
That's a misnomer.
Okay, Carol. Carol Sereno Walker donated 2 quilts embroidered and pieced by her grandmother, Beulah Tarbox Sereno Fosen, and quilted by Beulah's sister, Velma Tarbox Wolf. The exact dates are unknown, but maybe circa 1950. The first is Wedgwood blue blocks with white blocks that have blue embroidered birds.
Lost my partner.
Lost your partner?
Sorry, I'm admiring from afar. Got fired.
All right, and this is the second one from Carol Walker's grandmother, Beulah. 14 by 15 inch white blocks with embroidered pink floral design with blue and yellow flowers. And blue sash, or pink sash, I'm sorry.
Just
Flowers and
hours
sash.
and hours and hours.
Yeah.
But they did it every night, they didn't have TV.
We're watching Dancing with the Stars.
Marion, I'm sure it varies, but how long does it take to make a quilt from start to finish?
Well, that depends on whether you're machine piecing or hand piecing, or machine quilting or hand quilting. This next one you'll see, I think probably took the lady, I would guess 5 years or more.
5 years, okay.
This is unique. Quilt was made and donated by Mildred, Mrs. Vincent McCainbridge. It's white cotton with multicolor, hand-embroidered buildings depicting Morris landmarks. The 35 blocks are 13.5 inches square, and the back is muslin. It is a large quilt, 76 by 102. Other business names are embroidered in the borders. It was made approximately between 1950 and 1975. We don't have the
So
exact
that
date.
was all hand drawn?
Yep, I'm sure. She was awarded a first place and best of show at the 1982 Cornfest Craft Show. We have the ribbon that goes with it.
Oh, that's cool. Wow. Hours and hours. That's cool.
Has names of the clubs and organizations around the outside of it, the edges.
Orange meat.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, all the old time stores and businesses.
Yes.
But I'm sure that took a long time to make with all that embroidery and then all the extra quilting stitches.
Well, even drawing the buildings would have been time
Oh, sure.
consuming, plus getting them on the
Planning
plan,
it.
I mean, then.
Planning it and laying it out.
embroidering. A lot of erasing from mistakes.
Now we're getting into some more recent quilts. A log cabin in light and dark blue cotton, with backing and binding. It was made and donated in 2007 by Joseph F. Mauzy, owner of Hearth and Home Quilt Making and Sewing. It has the polyester batting, which was the newer type of batting. Now we've gone back to the cotton batting, which is much better. And now we even have bamboo batting.
Oops. Sorry, Bart. There we go.
It could almost be a baby quilt size. It's-
Yeah, I think it is,
Yeah.
yeah. Now, was that handmade or machine made?
That was machine made. I don't know this person, Joseph Mauzy, M-A-U-Z-Y. She donated it to our museums in 2007. The next one is circa 1970s, I think, a quilt found in our collection with unknown maker or donor. It's called Trip Around the World, and it is large.
It's gorgeous.
That's gorgeous.
Pastel colors of yellow, butterscotch, light and dark green, purple and lavender, and it's cotton poly fabric. It was machine pieced and quilted.
Beautiful. Gorgeous.
Huge.
I think that might be a queen size.
It's really pretty.
King size.
And this is our last quilt. In 2013, it was given to the museum by the Manuka Log Cabin Quilt Guild. The fabric used was from the 1950-1960 era, owned by Ellie Anderson's mother, Glennie Wade. It is a log cabin pattern. It was produced in assembly line fashion, some cutting strips, some sewing, and others quilting. It is stitched by machine, but quilted by hand, and autographed on the back by each participant. It took 300 hours to complete. Does that answer your question, Kirk?
Oh, with a machine.
Yes. But hand quilted and autographed. Ellie was a longtime member and supporter of this museum.
That's cool.
Beautiful.
So it's kind of a label with everybody's name on it.
Oh, yeah. Neat.
We have some quilts that are always on display, which we do change periodically. In the baby crib, when you get up and move around, you can see there are two baby crib quilts. One is white cotton and multicolor with 9 patch blocks, and the other is ecru quilt of cotton and satin, 8.5-inch triangle squares. And these were made by Carol Walker's grandmother, Beulah. The large blue quilt hanging on the wall is the Grundy County Sesquicentennial quilt, made by the members of the Historical Society in 1990. It was raffled off as a part of the county celebration. The blocks represent things of interest from the entire county. Each member used a muslin square and chose their own medium. Those include embroidery, cross-stitch, applique, patchwork, and photo transfer. The quilt was donated to the Society in 1993 by Milton Carlson. The framed smaller quilt was made from silk neckties in 1900. It was made by Catherine Patterson Hunt, wife of Sheldon Hunt. The quilt was found in a drawer by Catherine's daughter-in-law, Mrs. Brian Hunt, and passed on to a grandson, Robert Hunt, who had it framed, and it was donated in 2019 by Robert's wife, Alice. In the display case back by the doorway opening, we have a crazy quilt pillow made in 1886 by Hattie Smith Page, sister-in-law of William Page, a former Morris jeweler. It has a marine corduroy back and sides with white cording. It was donated by Janice Page McCullum. The bow tie pattern quilt was hand sewn by Ellen Bates Foster, probably in the late 1800s. Her husband was the lock tender at the Oxsable Locks. It was donated by Grace Foster in 2015. The Jubilee pattern quilt was made by Jenny Redshaw, who was born in 1882 in Grundy County, to John and Mary Little. Jenny was the great-grandmother of the donors, Diane Downey, and her sisters Kim Dawson and Melanie Wheeler. Also from Jenny Redshaw is a flower garden quilt of pink and green with scalloped edge. It has hand-pieced and quilted. Another churn dash of blue and white cotton was machine-pieced and hand-quilted. It was made for Mrs. Albert Mary Cooper in 1920 to 30 time period. It was handed down to her daughter Laura Cooper Ghanem, then to her son Harvey Ghanem, who donated it to the museum. It was made by the 5 sisters of Mary Cooper. A photo of the sisters was taken in 1930, and their ages ranged from 65 to 84. Excuse me, I need a drink. A white snowflake applique on blue background quilt. It was all hand done with quilt stitchings of 11 to 12 stitches per inch. It was made in the 1920 era by Marietta Crider Wainwright, mother of Florence Wainwright. Marietta was the daughter of Michael and Rachel Thomas Crider, and this quilt was donated by Betty Crider Ferguson. There's a Red Cross quilt, has the signatures of Mazan families. It was made by the members of the Mazan Red Cross in 1918. It was dedicated, quote unquote, to the boys who are with the colors. There are 144 blocks, each with at least 4 names per block, over 575 names. It was machine pieced and quilted, quite possibly on a treadle sewing machine from 1918, and it was donated to our society in 1975. A log cabin quilt of multicolors and fabrics was made by Great-Grandma Waters, and that's all we know about it. So if anybody knows who Great-Grandma Waters was, we would like to know. And then there is a multicolored churn dash quilt block set on point of cotton with cotton back binding and batting. It was hand quilted with 8 stitches per inch, and that owner is also unknown. If anyone knows information on these quilts, please let us know. Prior to having the museum, items were sometimes donated to the society, but not always well documented. Today, quilters are encouraged to make labels for the backs of their quilts with minimum information of the maker, date, and for whom it was made. If you have a quilt and know the history, please document it for future generations. We have a quilt registry at the museum. You don't have to donate your quilt, but by filling out a form, we can have a record of information on the quilts in the county. Since 2010, I have been helping our curator, Debbie Steffes, enter these items into our collection in a museum database. I was able to make printouts of all the quilts to put this program together. This concludes the quilts in our collection. And at this time, if you've brought quilts you would like to show, we'll start in the front, and you can stand up and tell us what you know about your quilts. Or ask questions of the rest of us.
Okay, I really don't know anything about it, except for it was in a house that burned. And because the house burned in Wilmington, my grandson bought the house. And these were not in a house, they had a machine shed that was heated. And in the heated machine shed were we confiscated some of the stuff before he dumped it in the dumpster. So I don't know anything about it, but it does say lap robe slumber made by Edith Palmer about 1900, made of cane ribbon.
Are you familiar with that term, Kathy?
Cane.
Cane, C-A-N-E.
C-A-N-E.
Cane
Like a
ribbon.
cane.
Okay, so back at one point, tobacco silks and tobacco companies were selling, a way to sell better or sell more tobacco and cigars and things such as that. They got the women hooked by putting little patches and, pieces of imprinting on, like, of Indians or sets. Like, they would sell a set of schools, or they would sell a set of universities, or they would have a 20-piece, of silks and stuff that have an imprint on them of Indians and all sorts of things. And they would be as a premium in a tobacco boxes or bags or whatever they sold at the time. And they would, the wives wanted to get the whole collection, so that they would say, honey, go buy some more tobacco. Honey, go buy some more tobacco, until they got what they wanted.
Smart.
So they were selling with that. The ribbons and stuff, they would use a lot from, sometimes they would have ribbons that were, you'll see in a lot of crazy quilts and stuff, that are, like, I've seen them for political, where they have the ribbons that would have been attached to buttons. They would embroidery them into it. If they were hair ribbons or other ribbons along that line for a special, they had a lot of them or something, you could actually buy, dress companies and things like that would sell, scraps by the bag, for 10 cents or $1 or whatever, and then they would use them and incorporate them in their crazy quilts. And crazy quilts that have the nicer silks and satins and things along that line, were prior. They started the big heyday of the of crazy quilts started with the 1876 Philadelphia Exposition, when they had the Japanese display there, and they showed the crackling or the glazing, the crazy glassware, the pots and stuff, and that's where the crazy quilts came and started about. So you started off with the leftover pieces of, silks and satins and things like that, and as you moved to the turn of the century, you got the darker and the more wools and things along that lines and things like that were more useful. So, but beautiful, beautiful quilts, and when you see a crazy quilt, and you see a lot of the shedding and the silks in that, they're called a weighted silk. They used, they would weigh silks, and you would buy it by the pound and not the yardage. So as it dried out and they processed it, those silks would lose weight. So in order to incorporate more weight back into those silks, they would add minerals and salts and tin and all sorts of things like that would rot the fabric over time. So with that, they would stretch 1 yard of silk into 5 yards of the weighted silk, and that's where it got cheaper and cheaper, so everybody could purchase that, where not just the rich or the well-to-do could have silk.
Now this one says crazy quilt made by Edith Palmer before 1902. Note original stitches to join the pieces.
And the nice thing about this, if you could lay it out and you could look at it and you would come back, you'd fold it up and you bring back out again and you'll find something new. There's more things that are hidden in there all over and over and over again. And they would just play with embroidery stitches or put in little motifs and things like that you could purchase.
Is that layered one on top, or one piece on top of another, or is that pieced together?
So a lot of the crazy quilts are foundation piece. So they would take the pieces and they would flip and sew, so they would lay the right sides together and then they would flip it down and stitch. Or they would take another piece, cut it whatever size or piece that they want, and they just lay them on and then stitch them down. It all depends on the maker. I have crazy quilts on both ways. And I have it where they started in the center, and I've had it where they have what they call a contained crazy quilt, which are the blocks,
Squares, yeah.
the squares and squares and squares.
Yeah.
And So they're one of my favorite
My absolute
quilts.
favorite quilt.
Yep, yep.
Okay, next.
Nick, you wanna bring yours?
Oh, there's a piece.
Somebody's or whatever.
Oh, probably.
You want the mic?
I believe this is a crazy quilt. And
Copy crazy, yeah.
this was handed down in the family. My grandmother, Peacock, was, my grandmother
This
Peacock,
way, they can't see on that side.
my grandmother Peacock, who was taken in by the Robinsons, the big farmhouse on Pine Bluff Road, up on the first big farmhouse. This came from that house. I have no idea the history. I don't know if it could be dated by the fabric. It's just a crazy quilt.
It was probably later, like the 50s.
Mhm.
So I would probably put it as circa 1950, 55, and then it goes 10 years forward, 10 years back. So you've got a scrap bag of fabric, and it was likely clothing or, you know, things along that lines.
My great grandmother probably passed away in the early 50s. I don't think my grandmother made it.
Okay, okay. There is some that would push it towards the 50s in the fabric, so, I would, the thing about you've got family, what they call family lore, and who, a lot of times, they would think that a certain person made it. I recently had a quilt that they thought was made in 1907 because they thought it was their great-great-grandmother made it, and the fabric did not come out until, like 25 years later, so we thought maybe just going by what was, that it could have been an anniversary quilt instead of a made for the wedding. So family lore, you know, it's not, if it's not documented from the original, you can't, sometimes you can't, it's not
Dateable.
or it's not, you can't say it's made by that person without it actually being
I
documented.
don't
to
think
this
my
day.
grandmother made it. I really don't.
Because, you know, we all take a story, and when I interpret that story, 5 years, I'm trying to go back over my mind. I think it was great grandma, but which one? So if I go back great grandma and then great great grandma, who is that great great grandma? So you lose track of the stories if it's not written down. So if you have stories that you have in your family that you know, even like current stories, write them down in a notebook.
Document those stories and make labels on anything new.
Yeah, you know, or anything. I had a piece that, it was a picture of the Last Supper, and I had family that liked to document that stuff, and it came over from Germany with my great-great-grandfather, and they listed on the back who it was when it came over, and it was, you know, it was a beautiful piece, and it was just a picture, and they put it on, and so it stayed with the family, you know, and, so it was a treasure. So if you know something, you know, keep track of it and write it down.
Bernadine, you got some quilts?
Nick's got. Nick's got.
I actually have memorabilia. This was the center of my grandmother's, don't I talk loud enough?
Yeah.
My grandmother and grandfather's wedding quilt. Wedding quilts meant something evidently in our family. This was a crazy quilt, and it is of all different materials, then they've got their names on them, and I do have the paper who they all are. As a matter of fact, there was one here, Lizzie, and there had never been anything too much said about the Finch side of our family. The female side of the Finch, we do have the Rumney reunion. We've got it back to, oh my gosh. But I didn't know some of these, and I asked my dad's cousin, Martha McCormick, and who is this Aunt Lizzie? Oh, she says, that's Aunt Lizzie. And I said, well, yeah, who? And she said, well, it was Grandpa's sister. She said, that's where I was born, on their place. The Oliveberry farm at Mazan was owned by these Aunt Lizzie Thorpe, who was owned by some Thorpes, and evidently the lady, the wife, was Elizabeth Finch. It was a whole new world to me. But anyway, this was the center with all these names, and I didn't want to lose them. And I had the quilt, the whole quilt earlier, and I talked about, my cousin gave it to me after my Aunt Irma Motter. Some of you remember her. She lived to be 98 and did a lot like me. And I mentioned that I'd like to do this, cut this out. Oh my gosh, don't do that. Don't do that. This quilt had been whipped onto other backings because, you know, it's from their wedding in 1872. 92. Grandma was born in 72, 92. And she had 5 kids. They lived on the farm. I'm sure it was cold. And it was a good quilt, so that she didn't want to lose these names, and so she'd take the top and put it on another backing. I had to get through 3 or 4 backings. If you lay that down, I've got in that thing. So after Robert passed away, the son, came home from the funeral, I laid it out on the table and I cut this out and I said, this is mine, it's going to be in a backing. But we cut the edges into pieces. And this is my memorabilia on my coffee table, on my side table. And we cut them out for all the girls. And what are these called?
Yo-yos.
Yo-yos, okay, I was called them roly-go. Grandma had made,
That sounds good too.
she had made a pillow top, and one of my daughters had it, and so we took the pillow top apart, and it makes it just a little bit of my grandma right here.
Aww.
Did I bring up my,
Did you want this one, Honey Jane?
yeah, probably. I don't know if it quite qualifies for,
Just want to hold this.
yeah. Does it qualify for an antique because it was made in 1931?
It's getting close to 100.
It is my baby quilt, and it's made, my grandmother made it, and yes, I think it's got a backing in there, there's a hole someplace you can see. But they used pieces of everything, and because Grandma had 5 boys, a lot of things that Grandma made was out of men's wear. And I'm going to tell you what wear. Here's the pull. Is that like a cotton in there?
A lot of times they would.
I was surprised with all these quilts that came, because I've carded wool. You ever carded wool?
Nope, I've seen it done, but I haven't done it.
A lot of our quilts were made with wool bats, and when they wanted to wash it, you took it and you had 2 things, and boy, that takes the kids. You got pretty tired of carding wool, let me tell you. It sounded like in the beginning it'd be fun, but it wasn't. And I think it's got a batting, I'm not sure what it was. But if you felt that, honest to God, I don't know how I moved under it. And on top of any baby, it was just. So now, because my grandmother said every baby deserves a quilt, I make these type of baby quilts. I was in a hurry, I tied it.
Oh,
It's
it's
got
beautiful.
polyester batting in it. Do you think that
Teddy
I
bears.
should go in and still sew it? And I'm a machine quilter.
It's very soft.
Adorable, darling.
Beautiful.
That's
Beautiful,
gorgeous.
sweet.
Very nice.
Some baby will love
And
that.
every quilt should have some type of a label.
Whoops.
Whoops.
It's on the back, I think, isn't it? Is it signed?
I don't see it. I think, have you got an initial down
Yes.
here, or something's there?
Oh, here.
Yeah,
The-
there it is.
It's a
I
heart.
always
It's a
sign
heart.
all my things to my kids with a hug,
And a heart.
the hug and a
I
kiss.
love it.
Hugs are
And they
good.
know. And I have to tell you, my daughter made my one I've lost. Oh dear, did I ruin it? She made a sweet t-shirt quilts for my youngest two grandsons, and she was starting to get real bad with the Parkinson's. And, oh, they loved it. Some of the seams weren't quite done, so they whispered in my ear, "Grandma, will you restitch this?" And Grandma, they don't have a label. I'm so proud of my boys that they know about the white gloves, they know about the labels. I'm just proud of my boys.
You raised them right.
Yes.
So, when we went to Arizona for my husband's health,
I'll hold it and you hold up the quilt.
I joined the quilting club out at the resort, and I'd heard about this, but I can't say her name. Tell me her name.
A designer?
That's a
Cotton
picture
Theory
of the
Lady?
quilt.
Betty Cotton.
I'm trying to get the name of, anyway, I wanted to learn how to do this. And it was a lady in the quilting group, and, oh, she knew how to do this. It's quilted as you sew it. And she tried to teach us, but I came back to the fabric center and they had courses on it, and I took it, and so this is not a quilt, but it's, why
It's a
can't I
table
say her
runner.
name?
It's a table runner.
Yeah,
Is it Betty Cotton?
Betty Cotton, that's it, Betty Cotton.
Hey.
Betty Cotton, yes.
Somebody said it, yes, we know.
I had it till I got up here.
Oh, I like that one.
And this is another Betty Cotton.
Oh.
It was from a
Cardinals.
kit that I got from someplace, but there are other things besides bed quilts that you can do. It was Betty Cotton.
Okay, who else? You had a bunch of quilts you wanted to. This lady.
Let's just leave this and I'll take it out to the car for you.
That's what that whole quilt that came, that was the center out of it.
That's beautiful. God, that is gorgeous.
You can put them in a bag for you.
With the bed.
That is such a great,
That is wonderful.
that is so good. I know, I think it's grandmother's fault. Thank you so much.
Can you imagine selling that quilt on top of it?
No, it's pretty heavy.
It was not heavy.
My grandma was born in 1895, so either she made it or her family, and I don't know, and I can't find out now.
Ooh, that's pretty. Ooh, I
Oh,
love that.
yes, she was born in 18.
Oh, I love that.
Probably has a very, very
Flower
good
garden.
That's beautiful.
Yeah, it's good. And then I have another one similar to it.
That's really pretty.
This is my favorite.
This is pretty.
The same design again, and the same type of backing again. And these are all hand stitched.
Is that hand pieced and hand quilted?
What?
Hand pieced and hand quilted?
It's all hand.
Yeah, it looks like it's hand quilted. Probably hand pieced too.
And this one I put on my boy's bed, I probably shouldn't have done that, right? I only have boys, so
Oh, that's
I
cute
just
with the
thought it looked more
cats.
like a boy.
Oh,
Oh, that's gorgeous.
oh, I love
Again, it's
that.
the same type of backing.
Oh, I like that. That's very nice.
Oh,
I think
that's-
it's fish, but I guess it's not. Is it fish?
I think so.
I've never seen anything
Looks
like
like
it. I
fish.
couldn't find it when I researched it.
There is,
This
it's in,
design.
it's in,
That's gorgeous.
Barbara Braxton's book.
Like I said, I'm not, oh, I see I have stains. I do
You have boys.
3 boys. And my 11 grandchildren are going to get older.
You got 11?
Yeah.
Oh my God. I wish, you know that.
I wish that would have been a bit younger.
Oh, I
Still-
like that one too.
That's
honey.
And this one is well worn.
Oh, I love it.
And, oh wow, it is worn.
Oh, that's pretty.
That's gorgeous.
Yeah, nice.
And
Oh, those triangles.
the same type of backing again.
These are gorgeous.
And like I said, I don't know anything, which is bad because when we were cleaning out my mom's closets, we found them. And I know she didn't make these. And so I don't know any information. Can't ask her now. She is almost 96, but she wouldn't be able to tell me anything. I don't know any of these designs.
Ooh, that's pretty. Ooh.
Star.
Oh,
Oh, that's a pretty one too. Oh,
beautiful.
I like that one.
Oh, that's beautiful. Oh, I love that.
And
Is there a particular name for this?
I have to look it up.
Okay.
There,
I love that.
if you wanna look up blocks, you could probably, without buying the books, go to the library. And Barbara Brackman has, several books out in the Encyclopedia of Blocks.
That's beautiful.
She has 2 books. The original book has like 4,000, and then the new blocks in it, and then the new book that she has is in full color, and that has a bunch of, additional blocks in it. And then there's also Ginny Byard has a big book of Encyclopedia of Blocks in that as well.
okay, so this one has the little ties. So this one's a lot newer because it's got the edging.
That's pretty.
But they tied this one.
That's pretty too.
They're gorgeous.
Look how they did that.
Work.
I know. A lot of hours.
Give me a tree, I could do
A lot of times they would
that. You think, I got time for that stuff. I'm sorry.
Too busy mowing grass.
I can't do this stuff.
And like Barbara Brackman's
God bless
books,
them.
you have, they'll give you, where that block, maybe the pattern was, so everybody has heard of the Kansas City Star patterns that they used to have in their newspaper, but a lot of your farm
Oh,
journals
nice.
and
Oh,
places
that's
like that would have patterns too, that you could, order a catalog and get your own pieces.
They're
I didn't realize I had so many,
Oh my
but I need
God.
them with 11 grandkids, so.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Your paper fell out, it says
Oh.
something 1920s.
Yeah,
Does it
I was
say
just,
her
I
name?
put my grandma's name on it. I
Oh.
lost another piece somewhere. And that's not sure,
Oh,
because I don't know that for sure, but I figure it's at least that. And I assume these type are newer than the other type I had.
It doesn't matter if it was tied, everybody, if it's tied or quilted, that can depict a certain time frame at all.
It's tied closer, maybe that's what I should do then, maybe.
And I think this is my last one, and this is maybe only 50 years old because I think there's some material in here that
Oh,
was
that's right.
my clothes when I was a kid.
Oh, I like that one.
I recognize some of the clothes, and this isn't a full-size one. It's like a
Just a
crib blanket
crib
or.
blanket, and then you had a little pillow too.
But, so my mom had to have made this one, cause these were some of my clothes. Cause I know this one's mine.
You always
So
look
forth and so
cute. You always look cute in high school.
Okay, I think that's it.
Matching pillow.
Oh,
Thank you.
a matching pillow, okay. I'll put them away later.
Looks like a
That
quillo.
is so nice.
Are you familiar with a quillo?
With a what now?
A quillo.
Oh, I know what that's for.
Well, maybe,
Don't you put your,
no, it's just the
No,
way
it's
it's put
not.
together. There are quilts that you can make,
put,
and the way you fold them, you leave an opening and you can put it into a pocket, and it's called a quillo, Quillow. I made one of those for my husband.
quillo?
A quillo. That's just a pillow covering.
Yeah, but never so.
You had quilts?
Oh, wow. I'm glad they all bought us.
So Kathy helped me with these because my mom passed in 2008, and I got this box from her, and she said your grandmother made these, and she passed in 1954. So this is one of them. Now with this one, we figured out that the piecing is older, but it was machine quilted probably in the 80s. So I'm thinking my aunt started quilting. She had been a nun, left the convent, was teaching at Western University and started quilting. So I think she probably finished this one. So it's a nice size. 9 patch, right?
Yes, a 9-patch variation, yes, a 9-patch within a 9-patch.
What's that?
This one is a Dresden plate.
What is this one?
Oh, that's pretty. What's that called?
Oh, that's pretty.
Dresden plate.
Oh my, that's beautiful.
Oh, that's gorgeous. You bring it out there.
It has some fabric loss in one of the petals, and it's always the same fabric.
It's the same fabric.
loss. So there must have been something in that fabric, whether, how it was processed or made, that it's deteriorating, because that's the only ones that are deteriorating, is that same pattern or fabric.
That's another one. There is a little damage on this one. And then this last one I just found folded up in these two. It has a lot of damage, but it's kind of cute.
It's actually in really good shape, it's just a big
There's
stain
some
That is cute.
in the corner, and it looks like either Kool-Aid or something like an ink or something like that that's watered down.
But it was hand stitched
That's
and
got the
hand
months.
quilted,
It's extremely,
hand pieced.
extremely quilted,
All the months.
very heavily quilted.
Very heavily quilted, yes.
Those are mine.
Anyone else? Come on up.
Very nice, thank you.
This is your
That's pretty. Oh, that's beautiful.
This, my mom started crocheting in the 1950s. And it took her into the 60s before she finished it. This was our wedding present when we got married in 1971.
That's nice.
We entered it in the Corn Festival,
In the 80s.
in the 80s, and she won Best of Show.
Oh,
Nice.
And we still have remnants of the pieces that she prepared to make the quilt, and
Some of the instructions
some of the
Oh
instructions.
my gosh.
start with little
Oh,
pieces like that,
that is so neat.
or the flowers.
Oh,
And what's left of one of the spools. I don't know how many, probably hundreds of spools, I'm guessing.
Very nice.
I can't imagine holding this in your lap to work on.
It's one of those weighted blankets.
Yeah, right, before weighted
beautiful.
blankets became popular.
Thank you for
That's
bringing
beautiful.
this. This is gorgeous.
This I know is not handmade, but my grandma Kowalczyk brought this over from Poland when she immigrated in 1912 for a bed cover.
Nice, beautiful.
I thought it would be interesting to bring.
Heirloom.
Nice, nice,
It's beautiful.
very nice.
Feels like it's silk.
Bedspread or a tablecloth?
We don't know.
I'm not sure.
It's kind of
Could be
silky.
either. It's big enough.
Could it be, no, it's too big. I was gonna say, could it be like a wrap? No, it probably.
I don't think
would
it's a
be bedspread,
tablecloth because
yeah.
this
No.
one end doesn't have fringe on it. That would
Is it
probably be at the head of the
three-sided? So
bed.
it's a
Yeah.
bedspread.
It's a bedspread?
Yeah.
That's
Three-sided.
Very nice.
It's beautiful.
Anyone else? Is that it?
Thanks for
Stick it.
bringing that, honey.
Just a few things in
Just put that
conclusion.
inside there.
No, honey.
In
Don't do
caring
that.
for your
Don't-
old or new
don't do that.
quilts,
Don't do
I
it.
recommend you
No.
go online, or as Kathy suggested, go to the library. There's a lot of information out there. I have a book that was given to me by my sister, also a quilter. Caring for Your Quilts by Haley Bone from the Kansas City Star Books. I went online to see if this was available. $100 through through Amazon, but there was one copy for $15 on eBay. You can't make copies because it's protected by the publisher. But it has a lot of good information in it. Just a few other things. Store your quilts in fabric or acid-free containers, not plastic, please. There are bags available to purchase. Pillowcases can be used. Fold them as few times as possible and insert acid-free tissue between the folds. If folded, they should be refolded several times a year to keep the creases from being set. Do not dry clean your quilts. The chemicals will damage the fabrics. They can be washed, but it's not an easy job. If it's necessary to wash them, follow specific directions for doing it. And to repair a damaged quilt, there are details online, and it is not an easy job. Some repairs can be simple, such as fixing a broken seam. But if the fabric is damaged, it becomes more tedious. And I'm speaking from experience because I repaired one for a friend, and I won't do one again. Anybody have any questions? Yes, Kathy?
We're all prone to, wanting to store quilts in the cedar chest. We always, grandma stored the quilts in the cedar chest. You want to keep, if you have an old cedar chest, there was a purpose for them years and years and years ago. Because there was so many bugs and stuff, but now we live in a pretty much a bug-free environment, with our quilts and our textiles like that. Line them with something. Don't let any quilts or textiles touch any raw wood. Either line it with a acid-free paper or even a aluminum foil so that there's nothing. So even if you have a quilt rack or you're using you want to use a ladder or something like that, put something down so there is not it's not touching the raw wood. Even in your display cases and things like that, your cabinets, make sure that you put something down. Because that oils and everything like from the wood will discolor start coloring like yellows or, leaf stains or something like that on it. And then also if you plan on, most quilts do not need to be washed unless they're dirty. If the preferred method would be just to air out, don't hang them on a line because that pulls the stitches on the old quilts. If you want to, if you're dead set and you have to wash them, it's better to put them in a plastic tub, soak them. You can buy Retro Clean or I've even used Orvis paste, and that can be found online, or you can buy some probably in the show cattle area because that's what it is. But I also use the original Dawn and just a little bit, and then you make sure that you disperse it in the bottom before you put in the quilt, and let it soak. Don't use them in the, don't put them in the, agitation for your laundry, or your wash machine. That will destroy your quilts. And if there's any kind of damage, don't wash it. It'll come back and nothing will be left of it. When you do empty the water, press the, gently just press it together. And be careful that you don't lift the whole thing up so that you start pulling the stitches apart or, tearing your quilt if it's snug. But most quilts don't need anything other than a nice airing out. You can do that by placing, on a nice day, placing a sheet down, putting that on top, putting another sheet on top, and just let it air out of the grass. Keep it from underneath the tree and out of the direct sunlight, if you can. But most of the time it just needs to be aired. If you have a spare bedroom, you can store your quilts on the bed and layer them. You can also wrap a pool noodle in cotton fabric, roll a bunch of them on that, and you can slide them diagonally or underneath your bed. If you have space like that or someplace out of the way, then you don't get the creases. But always make sure that the quilts are covered in a great cotton pillowcases are fantastic to store in. But remember, as you start stacking them on shelves and stuff, you want to take them out and rotate them a little bit because you're pressing down and getting more and more of the folds and that. So it's very important to bring them out and, let them lay out open for a while and go from there.
Okay, thank you, Kathy. Any other questions anybody has? Thank you all for coming. If anyone wants to donate a quilt, we will take quilts. We have a form that has to be signed. If you don't want to donate, but you want to have the information here at the museum, come and see us. I'm here on Friday mornings, so not this Friday, but most Friday mornings.